So while I was doing some research for a new smalls video, I came across this, and the old PB has done it again. This is a super cool lantern, but they're wanting $450 for these things. So I got to thinking, how could we make these really easy and a lot cheaper? By putting my twist to it, I came up with a couple of designs that you can make for less than $10. So no excuses on this one. It is a super simple build, so let's get to it. So the first thing that I had to figure out is, where am I going to get my light from, and how can I get it for pretty cheap? This is what I came up with. These look familiar? Yep, solar powered outdoor lighting. Okay, so you can pick these up at any big box store and they are cheap. I think I paid around $5 a piece for these, but you can find them as cheap as little over $1 a piece. Now don't worry, we're not going to be dissecting these things and getting all complicated. It's as simple as this. Okay, so they all just screw off in the exact same way and have an on and off switch. The only differences that you're going to have between the different lights that you may pick will be, of course, the size and then the light placement. I'm going to show you how to build these so that you can use about any style that you would like. Let's get started. I'm going to be showing you how to make two different styles. The parts that we'll be using will be the exact same size for both of these. The only difference being is that for the first design, we'll be using 4 corner boards. Now you can use about any type of wood that you want for this, and scrap wood is the best wood. But if you just want to go strictly from the big box stores, you can pick up a 1x6 or a 1x8, and that'll do the trick. Personally, I'm going to be using some hardwood that I had laying around that fit the dimensions that I needed. So for our top and our bottom, we're going to start off easy and just make these 6x6 squares. Now, if you're just making one of these, you only need a couple of these boards. But you know me, if I'm going to take the time to make one, I'm going to make 2 or 3. All right, so we have our top and bottom cut. We have our super cheap little lights. Here in a bit, we'll actually cut the side boards for this, but that'll come later. And now the dowel rods. Okay, so you're probably asking, why are you holding a package of dowel rods? You bought these things pre-cut? Come on. Okay, actually I did. So I was at Walmart looking around and stumbled across these that were already 12 inches long, which is exactly the size that we're needing. And they were only like $1.50 for 10 of the 3/8 inch dowel rods. That's actually pretty cheap. By the time that you buy dowel rods and cut them to length, you're at least going to have that in it. So since I'm planning on painting these things anyway and really don't want to use my oak dowel rods, these things would be perfect. So speaking of that, let's go and get these painted up so they can be drying while we work on the rest of this. So for each one of these lanterns, we're going to be needing 8 rods that are 3/8 of an inch by 12 inches long. So has anybody else ever noticed how hard dowel rods are to paint? Although this is not a perfect way to do it, it's pretty much the best way that I could think of. If anyone has any better ideas on how to paint these things, make sure to drop it into the comments. Now let's say that you wanted to shake this up a bit. You could actually use some brass rod or some steel rod. I'm just using dowel because it's super cheap and it's what I have in my shop. But like a lot of the projects that we do, there is a ton of different ways that you can change this up and make it your own. So the first thing that we're going to do with our tops and bottoms is to get everything marked out to fit our lights. So basically what we're going to be doing with the lights is just unscrewing this little stake, leaving us with this little flat cap. So if you notice on the inside of the cap, it's designed for the stake to be able to spin and lock in. So we're going to use the built-in notches to lock it in with these 3/4 inch flathead screws. So we're going to be wanting to install this light centered on our top board. So to line out our screw placement, we're just going to start by connecting our corners. Now that we have our board marked, we're just going to measure the inside of our light in between our 2 notches. This one's right at 2 inches wide, so that'll be my screw placement. If we place our screws at the exact distance between our 2 tabs, whenever we spin this into place, the screw heads will actually lock it down. Since we know that we want these 2 inches apart, I'm just going to center my ruler up at 1 inch and just make a little mark at the end and our 2 inch mark. So now with our screw placement marked out, I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill both marks. Okay, so now that we have our screw placement pre-drilled, let's go ahead and drill out our holes for our lights. So for your light placement, if you have more than one light, just measure the distance between the centers of each one. So for a 4 light setup, I'm at 3.5 inches. So since all of my measurements are working off of my center, I'm going to line my ruler up to 1.75 inches, mark my end, and mark my 3.5. And I'm just going to repeat this for my second line. So now with those marked out, I'm going to go ahead and drill these out. Now I want plenty of light to come through these. So I'm going to be using a 3/4 inch bit. But if your light looks something like this, just one bulb in the middle, as you can see in this prototype, you'll just be needing a hole in the very center. This actually came out of my wife's landscaping and became a prototype. So whenever she watches this video, love you, babe. So I guess you could say that I may be in the doghouse after this one, but if these things turn out the way that I think, she may like these even better, which would mean I would have to make a bunch of these. Yeah, I do it to myself. Okay, so to drill out the holes for my lights, I'm just going to use a piece of scrap wood here to drill through. And on each one of my marks, I'm just going to use a little pick to indent the wood to keep my bit from walking. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be drilling mine out to 3/4 of an inch. Now, of course, there's a ton of different bits and ways that you can do this. You can obviously use a drill press if you have one, but a handheld drill would do just fine. So now with the holes drilled, let's go ahead and test this out to see if everything lines up. So I'm going to start off by installing my 2 screws, making sure to leave about 1/8 of an inch of the screw head sticking up. Then we'll just take our light, put it on the top of our screws, and then spin it until it catches. And if the screws are not catching this right, you can always make some little adjustments to the height. Now that we know that it's catching, let's make sure that our lights are lined up on the inside. And there we have it. Need a SOS. I can't remember which one it is. 2 short, 1 long. Or to say help. Help! Alright, so now that we know that everything is lining up the way that we need it to, let's go ahead and cut our counter bores for our dowel rods. So we'll just take our light off for now and set that to the side. And I'm going to go ahead and take my screws out because I'll be sanding this later anyway. And since our dowels are going to be inset from the bottom, let's go ahead and flip our board over and remark our corners. Since I'm going to be using 8 dowel rods, I want to make 2 more lines that intersect the center, leaving you with something that looks like this. So for our dowel rod placement, just measure 2.5 inches from the center point on each one of our 8 lines. So now that we have our dowel rod placement marked for our top, let's go ahead and do the exact same thing for our bottom. You probably noticed that I'm using the pick. This just saves me an extra step. And I want each one of my holes to be around 1/2 inch deep. So to help me gauge this, I'm just going to mark my bit and put a piece of painter's tape at my line. This is kind of a makeshift depth collar. Or you could also use the collar that came with your pocket hole drill bit. Either way, since our dowels are 3/8, we're going to be needing 3/8 inch holes. Now we'll just drill out 8 holes that are 1/2 inch deep on our top and bottom boards. It looks like the bottom of a sander. Interesting enough. But that's what we want. Now with all of our holes drilled, let's get our edges ready for our corner boards. So I'm just going to mark each one of my corners at 3/4 of an inch in both directions. And once you have those marked, you can either use a table saw with a sled or a miter gauge, or you can simply use a jigsaw to cut these corners out. So whenever I'm using a jigsaw to make fine cuts, I like to position my body so that my eyes are directly over my blade. This just helps to control the jigsaw. Now for the second design, this is the step that we'll be skipping. Alright, so now that we have our little notches cut, we need something to fill those with. That's going to be our 4 sideboards. These are 3/4 by 3/4, so let's cut some 3/4 strips. So for our sides, we'll be needing 4 boards that are 3/4 by 3/4 by 13 inches long. Now with all of our parts cut, let's go ahead and give it all a good sanding. And if you're wanting to put a stain on this, now would be the time to do it. It's time for the fun part. Putting this baby together and getting all of these dowels to line up. So we're going to start off by installing our dowels. If we do this before we put our sideboards on, it's going to make things a lot easier. I'm going to put some wood glue in each one of the holes. And then we'll start installing our dowel. I like to give it a little bit of a twist as it goes in to help spread out that wood glue. And if you get any squeeze out, go ahead and clean it up as we go. Then I'm just going to keep working my way around. And if one seems to seat a little crooked, no worries. Whenever we put the top on, that'll all be straightened out. Okay, so now with our bottom looking like some funky sea creature, let's go ahead and attach the top. So I'm just going to do the same thing with our wood glue, except for this time whenever I get all of the glue in, I'm just going to go ahead and take something small, kind of like this drill bit, and just kind of spread it around. Then I'm going to clean off my drill bit. Alright, so now for the tedious part. We need to get all of these holes to match up with our dowels. So you have to get one dowel in at a time, and just keep working your way around. flip this over and see if we can line the rest of these up. So now with all of our dowels lined up, I'm just going to give it a little tap. And that's just making sure that all these dowels are seated. So I think this thing's looking pretty awesome. Let's go ahead and add these sideboards, then we'll be ready for our light. Now to install our sideboards, I'm just going to put some wood glue in our notches, and then we'll just line our boards up so that they're flush with the top. I'm going to go ahead and throw a brad nail in just to hold this while the glue dries. And if you notice that I'm turning and kind of positioning these boards, it's because I really like the knots and I want those to be on the outside. But just like anything else that we do, that's a matter of taste and completely up to you, except for the wood glue. You definitely need that. So I think this thing is looking pretty awesome just with some natural colors. Something else that I thought of that would be pretty cool is each one of these dowels, whenever the light comes down, is going to put off a shadow, kind of making a design. What if you put something in the bottom of this that, you know, may be special to you or to your home? Just an idea to kind of make things a little bit different. It kind of looks like a bird cage to me, so maybe a little fake bird or whatever. But at this point, we're ready to put our screws back in and attach our light. Lights on, and there's one last thing that I'm going to do to this one, and that's going to be to put a handle on the top. Right, there we go. I think this thing is going to look great at night. Looks pretty awesome during the daytime. Now for the handle for this thing, it's completely optional. If you like just this kind of clean look, keep it. Personally, I like kind of the old lantern look, so I'm just going to use some of this 3/8 twine. So to install this, I want it to where it's not going to make a weak point or interfere with any of my dowels. So I'm going to measure 1.25 inches from the side and 1/2 inch up from the edge. Then I'll do the exact same thing for the opposite side. Now I'm just going to take my 3/8 drill bit and carefully drill this out. And I'm just going to run my twine down inside, tie a little knot on the end. No fancy fasteners for this. Pull it through. Then figure out about how much that I want as overhang. Just kind of depends on whether you want it to like stand up like that. Then you'll leave it relatively short. Or if you want it to kind of, you know, flop down. All right, so we'll go with this. We'll leave just enough to tie a knot. And there we have it. This thing turned out great. So let's go ahead and hop into the second one. It won't take but a minute because there's only a couple of differences. Let me show you. Okay, so for the second design, essentially the only difference is that it's not going to have our sideboards. The dowel rods themselves will actually hold the top and bottom together. And since we're getting rid of that blocky look, we're going to add a little bit of dimension to the top and bottom boards by putting a bevel on with the table saw. So if you'd rather make this style, whenever you get to this point in the video, we'll just do this instead. And getting this nice beveled look is a piece of pie. We're just going to set our table saw to 45 degrees, and then our fence to where we're only removing 1/4 inch of material. For our top board, we'll run it through with our dowel holes facing up, putting this bevel on all 4 sides. And then for our bottom board, we'll do the same thing with the dowel hose facing down. Now that we have the nice beveled look, we'll go ahead and just put our dowels in just like we did for the previous one. Once you have all of your parts sanded and ready to go, we're going to use the exact same steps as we did for our first one. We'll throw some wood glue in, put in our dowels, add our top, give it a little tappity tap, then we'll throw our screws in and our light. And again, if you'd like a handle on this, go ahead and throw one in. Okay, so check these babies out. Now let's see what they look like at night. So the main difference between a multiple light and a single light LED is that the single light in the center will give you a lot better of a shadow design. The multiple lights are great for lighting up a larger area, so it's up to you. And these things look great. And I would guarantee you that if you're into making money with woodworking, these things will sell. But this project, just like a lot of the others that we do, proves that by allowing yourself to think outside of the box will open up your mind to endless possibilities. So never forget, you've got this. So get up, get out, and get your make on. Imagine taking a pile of wood and turning it into something amazing. Now, imagine doing that without years of frustration. You do not need a fancy workshop, expensive tools, or years of experience. With Woodworking Kickstart, you'll build confidence and real skills in no time. So you can spend years making mistakes and learning the hard way like I did, or you can start building with confidence today. So join me in Woodworking Kickstart and let's get your journey started.